Everyone, back tuning into today's video. It's JMA Friday, which means we're going to have a look at the Japanese model for the coming month. It's taking us to the end of July, so yeah, we're going to have a look at the longer range update for the coming month from Japan. We're also going to have a look at the weather next week. It's still quite uncertain, but I think things may be firming up a little bit, and it's looking a little bit changeable next week, particularly in the north. We'll have a look at all the detail on that in a moment, and also going to have a look at what's going on in the United States. It's Independence Day, of course, today, July before, but it's not very good down in the southeastern corner of the states, because we've got Hurricane Arthur coming in off the Atlantic, and that is Hurricane Arthur that you're looking at there, with that very bold and dramatic looking satellite picture. I'll have a look at all the detail on that in a moment. Before I get on with the video, though, just to say about the advertising in this video, advertising page use at gazworthis.com to hit play on the video ad. You'll be supporting gazworthis.com. Back to much to do now. So, yeah, that is Hurricane Arthur, the lovely eye of the storm there off the coast of North Carolina. It's category 2 hurricane, quite a big and intense hurricane, actually, this one, very early in the season, and it's the first, I believe, the first hurricane to hit the east coast of the states, to make landfall on the coast of the United States since 2012, the big storm that I had in New York, of course, and in the northeast of the states in 2012. Anyway, that is Hurricane Arthur. Let's see what it's predicted to do over the coming few days. This is the GFS chart from weathercentral.de for the United States, and there is Arthur just there off the eastern seaboard of the states right now. Going to run up the states through the course of the next few hours and the next couple of days. Weakening as it does so, it's going to be taking some very heavy rain up the eastern seaboard of the states, some very strong winds as well, and then it's going to eventually go northwards in towards Canada, and there it is as going to Sunday around Newfoundland as a very deep area of low pressure. No longer a hurricane by this point, it's over the cold waters of the North Atlantic now, so it won't be a hurricane, it'll be a subtropical storm. But even so, it'll pack quite a punch. You can see there that's very tight packed ice bars perhaps around that area of low pressure. It'll be very windy still, with gales, severe gale force winds, and no doubt lots of very heavy and torrential rain as well. There is the rainfall forecast from the GFS model. That is Arthur there off the east coast of the states. Very intense rainfall running up the eastern seaboard. Those purple colours indicating there could well be some severe flooding on the east coast of the United States over the next day or so. As we go through into Saturday, that's running northwards in towards the far north of the United States, far northeast, going up in towards the Canadian border. By the time we get through towards Saturday and on into Sunday, that low pressure is pushing northwards in towards Canada, so it's around Newfoundland by the time we get through to Sunday. Still very intense rainfall indicated there, though, with those dark blues and purple colours indicating some really torrential rain in places. Now, I've got quite an interesting sea surface temperature anomaly in the Atlantic just up those, and I wouldn't necessarily say this is the only storm we're going to get that's going to run up the east coast through the course of this hurricane season. We've got a developing El Nino, which sort of limits the potential really for the hurricane season. So I'm not sure it's going to be a particularly intense hurricane season with that El Nino, but the hurricanes we do get, and I think we'll get more than we had last year, because we've got this very warm water around the southeastern coast of the United States and running up the east seaboard. I think the hurricanes we do get, there's a very good chance that those hurricanes will come in very close to the east coast of the states through the course of this season, which of course is running from now, July, through towards November. Peak of season will be around September and October. With those warm temperature anomalies just off the east coast of the states, we could well see quite a few of these hurricanes moving in towards the eastern seaboard, and they could be bigger than this. And this is a category 2, so it's a pretty big storm, but if you start getting category 3, 4 and 5 hurricanes hitting the east coast of the United States, particularly the northeastern coast around New York City, then of course there is the potential for some very, very disruptive weather indeed. So it'll be worth keeping an eye on how this hurricane season develops with that warm water off the eastern coast. And what could happen, of course, with that, if those hurricanes, if they do start running up the east coast, is that they can get caught up in the jet stream around Newfoundland and pushed out into the Atlantic, and eventually, not as hurricanes, but eventually as quite deep areas of low pressure, they can finish up over in the eastern part of the Atlantic around the UK and Europe. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops, I think, through the course of the next few months. Now, it's JMA Friday, which means we've got an update from Japan for the next month. These are 500 millibar height anomaly charts for the coming month, broken down into weekly periods. So the first week period is the week we're currently in, the 3rd to the 10th of July. The first thing that you need to know about this is that we're upside down on the chart. And as ever with 500 millibar heights anomaly charts, the blue colours are extrapolating to low pressure, the red and orange colours are extrapolating to high pressure. So what we're looking at for the coming week is a trough of low pressure around the British Isles, really. We're under those blue colours, so it's going to be quite a second week with low pressure in the trough. There's the big ridge of high pressure that's sitting to the west of the country in the Atlantic, but it's not close enough really to keep it totally settled. And this trough of low pressure is running through the country on the jet stream, running around the top of that high pressure. So quite a changeable week coming up for the coming week. What goes on as we move through to the second week, which will take us from the 10th to the 17th of July, and not a great deal of change really. We've still got that trough of low pressure, if this is right, sitting around the country with those blue colours. The ridge of high pressure is still out in the Atlantic. It's not as unsettled as the coming week period, but nevertheless it is still reasonably settled. Low pressure, the trough, perhaps shifting a little bit to the east as well, so it might be at risk of sort of more northerly type influences there, or maybe even easterly, but it's still unsettled anyway going through that second weekly period. And then the 3rd and 4th weeks will take us from the 17th to the 31st of July, so take us right to the end of the month. And what we see then is the trough of low pressure setting up to the south of the country as a cut-off feature. Got the suggestion of some sort of ridging starting to take place up to the north. I think what we're seeing there is probably it's turning a little bit more settled, but with the trough down to the south, we could still be at risk in the south some unsettled conditions. Probably turning warmer as well, probably bringing up more sort of southeasterly type influences. So maybe a thundery sort of suggestion there for the final 2 weeks of July. That's quite an interesting pattern. It could turn quite a bit warmer, I think, second half of the month, and maybe thundery, particularly in the south of the country. Now, having a look at the weather for the coming week, finally, there's been a lot of uncertainty about the weather next week. I've been talking about it in the videos this week. A lot of uncertainty for next week, but I think things may be starting to get a little bit clearer now. So here we are for Tuesday. We're under a bit of a trough still, upper trough anyway, but ridge of high pressure is out to west. This area of low pressure over here, by the way, is the remains of Hurricane Arthur up over Newfoundland. That is going to come out into the Atlantic through the course next week and run in on the jet stream. So as we go through to Wednesday, we've got a bit of a ridge of high pressure coming in there off the Atlantic. The main area of high pressure is centred in the central part of the Atlantic, of course, but it's throwing a ridge through across the country on Wednesday. But got all this low pressure to the north around Greenland, Iceland and Canada. Eventually that starts to push through as we go through to the second half of next week on the latest GFS. So by the time we get to next week, after a couple of drier, warmer days, it's turning unsettled again with this low pressure coming through. And remember, this low pressure doesn't contain some of the remains of what is now currently Hurricane Arthur on the eastern coast of the United States. That will be bringing showers along with spells of rain at the very least across the British Isles if it's right. And then that low pressure sort of sits around the country as we go through to Saturday. We seem to be in a very odd sort of pattern at the moment where we're having drier, warmer spells in the week and more unsettled conditions over the weekend. It's strange how the weather goes through these sort of cycles and patterns, but that's what we're currently in. We've got an unsettled weekend coming up this weekend, and we may do it all over again next weekend, that area of low pressure sitting over the country. As we go through to day 10, which is Monday the 14th of July, low pressure is starting to exit out into the North Sea, and then the suggestion that we're building in another ridge of high pressure off the Atlantic. But how long that would last, I'm not sure. There'll be no real suggestion yet that this high pressure is getting itself into a position to produce a prolonged dry and warm spell, but it could come in the second half of July. Have a look at the ECMWF. There's the chart for Tuesday. The low pressure over the country is a shallow trough of low pressure in the upper atmosphere. That moves away as we go through into Wednesday, although it could still be bringing some quite heavy rain into the southeast. A bit of a ridge starting to move in behind it, the Atlantic. The ridge tries to build in the second half of next week, but never really makes it. It's sort of staying unsettled with these lows of low pressure around the country. It's not going to be a washout, but it'll be probably unsettled with at times, to be honest. And then as we go through towards next weekend, bringing another low pressure through across the country. Always driest in the south because we're close to that ridge that's setting up across France from this main high pressure in the Atlantic. But generally it's quite a changeable sort of sea map as we go through towards the weekend. Day 10, Monday the 14th of July, shows that we may start to build the ridge stronger up into the south of the country as we go through towards the middle of July. So it's a very complicated pattern still, really, to try and pin down for July. But I think what we're looking at next week is probably an unsettled start week with showers. Then maybe a drier couple of days midweek before things perhaps go downhill again a little bit towards the end of next week as low pressure begins to move in off the Atlantic. That could set us up for another unsettled weekend next weekend. So that's how it's looking at the moment. And then the longer range sort of idea from the Japanese model is that as we go through to the second half of July, we may start to see the trough setting up to the south of the country, which probably turn it drier and warmer for a time, but could also threaten some thunderstorms and quite a big increase in temperature perhaps for the final stages of July. All very speculative and that's a very uncertain scene at the moment. Models have been very uncertain for several weeks now, with Atlantic hurricanes starting to come into the North Atlantic as well. That can only get worse probably, so we're probably going to see the model reliability getting even worse over the next few weeks and possibly the next few months with this hurricane season beginning to take shape. When you have hurricanes in the Atlantic, I've explained this before in other years, it's like throwing a bomb into the atmosphere. A hurricane is basically a bomb in the atmosphere, and the shock waves, as they spread out, does mean that the models become very, very unreliable through these hurricane seasons. So it's going to be a very challenging period to forecast as ever. That's it for now. We've got weekend forecast tomorrow, so come back for that. And that's all for now. Thanks for watching.